Esta mañana está con nosotros Ravin Jesuthasan. Él es líder global de servicios de transformación en Merce. Ravin, thank you very much for being here. Parece que estamos teniendo ahí algún problema con la conexión. Él, bueno, pues es un líder, digamos, en el tema justamente organizacional. Mercer es una empresa vinculado a ello y está muy interesante porque, bueno, pues estamos viendo nuevas tendencias en la forma de trabajo. Así que a ver si ya tenemos a Ravin. Ravin, thank you very much. Do you listen to me?
Thank you, Rodrigo. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect.
Thank you for
Thanks.
taking this interview. So, first of all, I will begin with something very basic. But what do you think about the return to the office? What are you seeing in terms of the remote work and the combination with being at office?
Yeah, Rodrigo, it's really fascinating to see how this has happened. Just by way of historical context, in 1970, Alvin Toffler, the futurist, wrote about us working in electronic cottages. And in 50 years in the United States, we got up to 6% of all work being done full-time remote. And then overnight, we went to 56%. I really think, Rodrigo, that the genie is out of the bottle. I do believe that the companies that are going to win in this new world of work are the ones that afford their workforces the most flexibility as to where and when they work.
Le pregunto a Rabin que qué opina en la combinación, digamos, del trabajo remoto al trabajo en oficina, porque ese es un debate bien intenso que está allá afuera, cuántos días tenemos que regresar y tal. Y me dice que en los 70 Alvin Toffler hablaba justamente y preveía, proyectaba que iba a haber, digamos, silos de trabajo electrónico, y menciona Ravin cómo pasamos pues del 6% que se hacía de trabajo remoto a arriba del 50%. Evidentemente la pandemia fue un factor, eso no me lo dice él, lo pongo yo, pero dice además el genio está fuera de la botella y ya pues no es fácil regresar, y las compañías que tengan más flexibilidad pues son las que van a poder atraer más digamos, talento. And you have defined some new work operating system. What is the concept behind this?
Sure. So my co-author and I, John Woodrow, just wrote a best-selling book called Work Without Jobs. And the reason we wrote this book was to basically point out that this traditional construct for work, where jobs has been the currency for work for the last 140 years, is increasingly appearing to have run its course. Because what we're seeing is by having the job as the currency for work, our ability to respond to shocks like the pandemic, the financial crisis, is significantly compromised. Our ability to create more inclusive, adaptable, agile workplaces is increasingly compromised. And so, what we suggest in the book is a work operating system that progressively moves from jobs as the currency for work to increasingly where skills and capabilities are the currency for work.
Qué interesante. Me dice que, bueno, él escribió con su coautor, justamente con John Woodrow, el libro Trabajos, más bien Trabajo sin puesto de trabajo, sería la traducción en México, Work Without Job. Sí, trabajar sin puesto de trabajo, así lo traduzco, seguramente usted me estará corrigiendo, pero bueno, me dice que pues es que en los últimos 140 años esa ha sido la dinámica, es decir, el trabajo se realiza a través de puestos de trabajo, pero ellos proponen que eso debe cambiar, y eso a partir de un sistema operativo del trabajo en donde esté más centrado en habilidades, en capacidades, que en un puesto de trabajo, y eso lo cambia todo. And this concept, how can be adapted by the companies? I mean, you have a job description in a company when you hire someone, but that job description entails some skills, some abilities, and some objectives. So with this new work operating system, what will be the difference in terms of the design of that job or the process of hiring, or how do you envision that part?
Yeah, Rodrigo, it's a really good question because what we're starting to see is more and more companies not using the traditional job and the job description, but rather having some very sort of fundamental skill profiles. And then the way people are connected to work is not through a full-time job. They might all be employees, but increasingly they're connecting to work through assignments and projects where internal marketplaces driven by algorithms are connecting work to projects. So as an example, you would be someone with great communication skills, the ability to tell a story, the ability to maybe connect the dots between different domains. As work emerges in the form of a project or an assignment, you would be connected to that and based on the skills you have. And then as new work emerges, the algorithms are continuously looking at what are the skills required for the work and identifying the best person for the work based on the skills they have, instead of necessarily looking at what degree did this person get maybe 20 years ago, what previous job did they have, but rather continuously inferring what skills the person has and has gained, and then connecting them to work, which could be assignments, it could be projects, it could be gigs, it could be secondments, it could even be a job, but you might move from one position to another much more quickly.
Very interesting. Le pregunto cómo se da, por ejemplo, normalmente una compañía tiene la descripción del puesto y el proceso, por ejemplo, de reclutamiento se da en ver quién cumple con ese perfil de puesto. Y me dice que ahora lo que está ocurriendo es que más bien se requieren perfiles y habilidades y entonces, por ejemplo, a través de un algoritmo pueden asignarte a un proyecto, a una asignación de acuerdo a esas habilidades, por ejemplo, por medio de un algoritmo. Y me dice, si tú tienes buenas capacidades de comunicación y conectar los puntos, eso finalmente pues te pueden asignar a un proyecto que en ese momento lo requiere, pero no necesariamente la descripción de un puesto como tal. Do you have an example of a company that used this approach in terms of solving its problems?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the great examples out there, and it's a case study in our book, is Unilever, which in right now, all 65,000 white collar workers at Unilever have the flexibility to flow to projects and assignments and gigs. They might still be in a job or they might be in an agile pool, but they have the flexibility to take on projects and assignments across the company based on based on the skills they have, based on their interest, based on adjacent skills they have, so that they can both contribute to the company as well as use these projects as way of acquiring new skills that make them more marketable and more productive in the future.
Qué interesante. Le pregunto por un ejemplo de una compañía que funciona así. Me dice que Unilever, que tiene 65,000 empleados, pues están en un pool, pues en un grupo, digamos, de talento y a partir de ahí van escogiendo proyectos, asignaciones y bueno, pues se van, digamos, incluso promoviendo y tener estas habilidades. And how was the change in Unilever? Unilever, it was how can a big company like that can make the change, or what is the first step in order to have this kind of approach?
Yeah, I think Unilever did a couple of things exceptionally well, Rodrigo. The first is they started way back in 2018, but with their framework for the future of work. So think of it as creating a North Star. And that North Star was really focused on driving a much more flexible and agile work operating model. And then what they've subsequently done is with every project they've introduced, whether it's the introduction of their marketplace, whether it's the introduction of their flexible working programs, they've consistently driven those changes with senior leadership support and enabled by an HR function that continuously was testing and experimenting and trying new things, recognizing that, you know, they might fail, but that's okay. We're going to learn from the failure and we're going to make the next iteration better. So I think having a North Star and having really deliberate change management led by the senior leaders was what was really powerful.
Le pregunto cómo fue en el caso de Unilever este cambio y me dice que pues tienen que tener un gran referente, una, digamos, North Star o estrella de referencia y a partir de ahí flexibilidad, agilidad y hay una parte muy importante. Entonces tienen que ser los altos ejecutivos de la empresa los que, digamos, abracen el concepto y luego la parte de recursos humanos que permite ir dando seguimiento y apoyo y entender que puede haber equivocaciones, pero evidentemente se va aprendiendo. Now, what would you say is the comparative advantage of having an approach like this and a more traditional approach? Because I guess it's hard at the beginning. It can create a lot of uncertainty for many workforces, especially after the pandemic, and there is a lot of uncertainty in terms of the definition of policies, etc. So what would you say is the comparative advantage for those companies that go ahead and make these changes?
So I think at the heart of this new work operating model is a much more human-centric one, where the person and the skills of that person and the unique attributes that he or she brings is really the organizing construct for work. And what we see is with companies who move in this direction, they have much greater agility. They're able to respond much more quickly. They are able to ensure that their talent has a clear sense of the skills they have and how they can contribute, and the opportunity to keep themselves relevant by continuously upskilling and reskilling to meet the changing needs of the business. So you have a workforce that is staying relevant with you as your business needs are changing. In some of the examples that we show in the book, we've been able to show companies gains in productivity of more than 600%, and much greater speed and agility with getting work done. So what we're seeing are not just economic gains that are significant, but human gains in terms of the attractiveness of work and the engagement of the talent that can be as compelling as the economic gains.
Ravin, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you, Rodrigo. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
Gracias. Ahí escuchamos y vimos a Ravin Jesuthasan, líder de servicios de transformación en Merce.